Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I rise against Senate Bill 1811 for several reasons, and I'd like to begin with talking about the nearly 5 million school children that are depending upon us now in what we do. Representative Line asked yesterday, how much is enough? I thought his remarks were quite insightful. I thought he raised some challenges to us. I thought he pointed out that we need to have some questions answered. Well, I'm here to answer one question for you, sir, and I believe for all of us, that this bill is not enough. This is not enough for public schools. It is not enough for public school finance, and it is wrong today because what we are doing is we're going to cause and create in many of our 1,000 and some odd school districts a tax increase. For those of you who find that word so horrendous, think about it, because you are voting for a tax increase today. When school districts have to make up that money, they're going to say we did it because of our legislators in Austin who failed to adequately fund public education. For those of you members who've not been through the school finance fights, let me remind you of what our Texas Constitution requires. Our Texas Constitution requires that the state must establish and make suitable provision for the support and maintenance of an efficient system of public free schools. We've been to the courthouse so many times and the state has lost so many times that I'm not surprised in this year of our Lord, 2011, we're going to be facing more lawsuits when we leave here. And the biggest problem, it's not just the lack of adequate funding, it is the equity gap that continues to grow. When we froze the amounts in 2006 and left many districts, many poor districts, and many what I might call middle income districts in a situation where they would not be able to close that equity gap, we froze that and made it a permanent equity gap. And today we make it even wider. Today, with across-the-board cuts, you only exacerbate it and you only invite meritorious lawsuits against the state of Texas because, again, we inadequately finance public constitution. It is public education. It is the most important thing we do. It is the great equalizer among all of us, of whatever color, race, or creed. It is a public education. My parents taught me that. My grandparents taught me that. And they said, go to school. Get the best education you can. What we're doing today is making our system not just less equitable, but we're going backwards. We're going backwards in time so that all the gains we've made in public education will be challenged. And I don't know why. We are going to cut $4 billion when we have, according to the comptroller, about 6.3 or 6.4 billion in the bank. How do you go back and tell that to folks back home? How do you face the teachers that are laid off, the classrooms that you're going to go speak to or maybe read a book in, where the classrooms are now 25 or 28 or 30 to 1? How do you think that that's a quality education for our public schools? I don't see it. We talk about repealing this whole system of public education, and we talk about this inequity, and I want to talk about a moment for the target revenue issue, because as it was frozen in 2006, I watched Senator Deuel the other day in the Senate do a breakdown based on the targeted revenue hold harmless about the gaps between the lowest district and the richest district. For those of you who live in Senator Eltief's district, the gap between the lowest and the richest is $3,092. That is per child. $3,092 per child. So one classroom of 25, multiply that 3,000 by 25. One classroom. If you live in Senator Deuel's district, it is $1,747 per child. If you represent part of Robert Nichols' district, it is $3,147 per child. If you are in Tommy Williams' district, it's $2,449 per child. This is the gap that we'll be talking about at the courthouse. In Senator Ogden's difference, it is $4,096 between the lowest district and the wealthiest district. In Senator Patrick's district, it is $1,252. In Senator Shapiro's district, $2,224. In Senator Harris's district, it's only $870, but that's a big amount when you do it per child. In Senator Davis's district, it's $2,083. So those of you who are following this, that's who your senator is. You know how your districts are. I can go on to Senator Nelson's district. It's $2,280 per child. Senator Ellis, $400 per child. Senator Watson here in Austin, $1,180. Senator Whitmire, $1,572. Senator Corona, $1,076. I'm sorry, $1,076. Senator Huffman, $2,072. Senator Hager, $3,225. Senator Ureste, $7,975 between the lowest and the richest. That is the education gap we have, and that is the education gap we are adding to today. Senator Hinojosa in the Valley, $4,870 between the poorest and the wealthiest. Senator Zaffarini, $6,302. Senator Birdwell, $3,632. Senator Fraser, $2,968. And again, members, this is per child.
Mr. Speaker.
Grand number is...
Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman yield?
I do not yield at this time. The grand amount is Senator Robert Duncan at $8,589 per child. I'm sorry. Senator Seliger at $7,955 per child. Again, a difference of $1,000 per child can pile up quickly. I point this out to you because the disparity is going to widen as a result of Senate Bill 1811. When you do across-the-board cuts, all you do is create more inequity because the wealthiest don't get the same cut. Now, a few things that are also very clear about this bill. When we start talking about how much we're going to do per child and about class sizes probably having to go up and about cutting back here and there, and we think about the 5 million school children, nearly 5 million of our state, we really have education and wealth being decided by your zip code. If you live in a certain area, you get more money per child, and you do better. There's no question that the school finance system that Senate Bill 1811 would enact for the next 2 years will put many districts in serious financial trouble and will prompt those tax increases. If we look at the bottom one half of the districts, 512 districts, with more than 2.6 million children, about 60% of all the children in public schools, what we see is they're going to be losing about $300 per WADA also. If you look at the top districts, you see that they're only going to lose $400. So when you're trying to close that gap, you never do it. And we don't do it with this. Now, my good friend, Chairman Eisler, says that we'll start looking at doing away with the hold harmless and revenue agreements in 2018. Well, I don't know about that. There seems to be a lot of people that want to keep this inequity going here in our great state, and I don't think that's right. It's not right for the poorest child to get a lesser education and as compared to the wealthiest. I ask you to think about these things today because not only politically is it difficult to go back home and talk about why you cut public education, but it is also an immoral thing to do. All our children deserve the same from us. All our children deserve the same basic, good, quality public education. The Constitution requires we do that. The Constitution does not require us to do it in the waning hours of the legislature with no public hearings, without going through the proper process, and by making a vote that we could really, really regret. I ask you all to please consider voting no.
Mr. Speaker.
We're doing something here that was only unveiled yesterday, has never had a public hearing, hasn't had any questions asked about it, or any public input or scrutiny. I've heard a lot of discussion this session about the rights of Americans and about voting rights. What about the rights of these children? This will be the first school finance plan passed in modern times without a court order. I predict that the next school finance plan is going to require a court order. For those of you who pledged no new taxes, you violate your pledge today, because a yea vote on this bill will force that type of taxation.
Gentleman's